Hey, everybody. Brandon Smith here, back again for the Syrup City podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Vickers. Matt, how's it going, my man?
It's going good, man. How are you?
Good. It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, especially in this weather.
Yeah. So we're I know you're listening to this on Friday, and hopefully the weather's better. We're recording this on Thursday, and we just went through a tornado.
Yeah.
And so I think it's still raining outside. I don't know. Yeah. So, but hey, hopefully everybody, if you're listening now, hopefully you had a chance to listen to the last podcast. You know, I had some good feedback from it. So,
yeah, I did too.
Yeah. So, and if you hadn't had a chance, go follow us on Facebook, and that's the Syrup City Podcast on Facebook, and go check it out there. You can follow it, and you can stay up to date with all that stuff. We also have podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. All you got to do is type in Syrup City Podcast, and again, that's on Spotify, YouTube, all those places. And then you can check us out on Podbean, and the website for Podbean is real simple. All you have to do is go to syrupcitypodcast.podbean.com, and that is where we get our podcast. So
also, don't forget, Syrup City is one word.
Yeah, Syrup City is one word on the Spotify and
YouTube and all that.
Yep, all that, and Facebook. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. We are excited today.
We are.
This is our first full episode. This is the episode we have guests, and we're super excited. And I was talking to Matt, weeks before this all started, and I said, if we're going to have guests, I know who our first people have to be.
Hands down.
And so we are joined today with Sam Quick and Bryan Gainous from Providence Baptist Church. Gentlemen, how is it going?
What's up, guys? We're glad to be here today.
Hey, good.
Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good deal. Bryan, how you doing okay over there?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you guys for having us on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I listened to the first episode of the podcast, and just excited to be on here and share with you guys, but certainly appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this whole idea, of this podcast was just, obviously we've talked about it all the time. We want to be informative. We wanted to be Jesus-centered, and then we also want to have a great time talking about so many different things, whether it's funny stories, sports, whatever the case may be. We want to have a good time talking about that stuff. And so, I just thought a couple reasons. The first is a more serious reason. I just, I have so much respect for you two guys.
Absolutely.
And even since I've been here in Carroll, you guys have helped me out in more ways than you can imagine as far as just ministry and how to carry certain things out. So I appreciate y'all for doing that. And then also, too, the other reason, we're going to talk about a funny story here in a minute. So if you're familiar with Grady County and you're familiar with how things work, the Carroll Messenger does a thing where they do the best of the best, and they vote for the best of, everything for Grady County, all the way from chicken, pizza, you name it, law offices, whatever. There's the best of the best. And so every year they vote for the best church, the best pastor, the best youth pastor, the best music minister, all that stuff.
Who won that?
Who won what?
Who won Best Pastor?
The best pastor is the guy sitting across from me,
Nuh-uh.
Sam Quick. So
the Sam Quick.
The Sam Quick.
What?
And then, you'll never guess this, the best youth pastor
Hit me with it.
is right across the table as well.
No way.
Bryan Gainous, yeah. And
what?
And I heard they won best church.
Nuh-uh.
So Providence with a clean sweep.
You got that right.
And so, man,
Something's happening
I was like,
over there.
we have to interview the best. Now, here's the thing. For the youth pastor position, I came in second. For the second year in a row.
Man.
At least you're consistent.
That's true.
Yeah. At least I'm consistent.
Yeah.
But, I was just sitting here with the podcast, and I was like, I told Matt, I said, we have to have them on because, why can't number 2 interview number 1?
Absolutely.
That just makes the most sense.
Absolutely.
And so
that way you learn from them. They can teach you their ways.
So, all right. So, funny story about all that. So you probably remember this, Bryan, the moment that it got sent out or whatever, you guys sent a picture in a group chat and you sent it to me, and Sam was in it, and my pastor, Pastor Chris, was in it. It was the 4 of us, and they were just like,
You got to rub it in, man.
because Chris also got second, so we both got second, and I think Cameron got second for worship leader too. So First Baptist Church did a clean sweep for second place. So
Heck yeah.
I guess that's kind of something to be proud of. I don't
Yeah.
know. But so anyways, of course they're sending it to us, and they're like, it's good back and forth banter. Here's the thing: we love to have a good time, but all in all, at the end of the day, and I don't want anybody to get it twisted, we all support each other.
Absolutely.
We all want to support each other. We all have a good time, and so it was just good fun. It was all in good fun. Well, here's the thing: I'm all about taking things a step further.
Of course you
Sometimes it gets me in trouble. That's okay. So, Bryan, this is the part I don't think you know, because later that night, Sam went live on Facebook.
Uh-oh.
And he was doing like a devotional. I think your girls were in it, or your one daughter was in it. And they're going back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And I jump on there, and I kid you not, I am sitting in the hospital. My wife is literally getting ready to have our second baby. And I am watching his live stream. Probably not the best setting to do that.
No, I wouldn't suggest it.
But so I'm watching his live stream, and you know, like when you're hosting a live stream, they're, you know, the person who's watching, their names will pop up and it'll say so and so is watching, whatever.
Right.
Well, so I waited, and so my name pops up, and I know it popped up because Sam looked down at the phone and he started smiling, and I was like, here it comes, here it comes, and so I comment on there in the middle of the live stream, and I said, you are, and then in capital letters I put the best. And so here's the thing, Sam had two options. He could have just ignored it, or he could have engaged with it.
No.
He chose option 2. He chose to engage with it.
Yeah, I could not ignore it.
But you have to admit, it caught you off guard because he was like, he's like, if anybody's seeing that, Brandon's comment, that's a joke. That didn't happen. So I wanted to get your take on what your thoughts were when I did that, because I was like, I have to do it.
So sometimes I get on there and I try to be interactive because I know that it's kind of cool when you get a shout out, you know, thanks for watching. But I think at that point I was actually driving home a gospel message, man.
You was like right in the middle of it.
And it caught me off guard. And I was like, man, this guy's more brave than I thought he was. And he's going to be in trouble next time I see him. I can tell you.
Yeah, it was funny. It's like we ended up texting until like 12:30 in the morning that night, going just back and forth. And because like as soon as the live stream ended, I leaned over at Jessie. Jessie's like, she's sitting in the hospital bed. She's like, why are you laughing? I was like, because I'm fixing to get a phone call or a text message from Sam. And sure enough, he texted me. And he was like, dude, you're wrong for that.
And I had no idea he was at the hospital.
Yeah, I never told him.
So the next thing I saw was, you know, mama and baby are well, pictures to come. I'm like, what a guy, man. You know, what a guy. You're going to be messing with me while his wife is in labor.
It doesn't matter where and when. I'm going to bring the heat, okay? Oh, man. But anyway, so we're so glad to have you guys on here. And we're going to, I guess, you know, Matt and I, we're going to take some moments and just kind of go back and forth with you. So I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but Bryan, you work for State Farm. You're a State Farm agent, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, well, I noticed when you walked in, you were wearing shorts. You weren't wearing khakis. I thought it was a dress code thing.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty terrible with the State Farm khaki dress code deal, but it never fails when I do land in khakis and a red shirt. I mean, whether it's, you know, going in a restaurant, obviously not right now, but Walmart, whatever.
Yeah,
you know, it's just Jake. Are you Jake from State Farm? Like, that's cute and all, but no, it's not like an official dress code. I don't make my staff wear khakis and a red shirt, but
I got that right.
Certainly when we do, we always get asked.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that comes with the job.
Right.
He actually tried to get him to do it, and it failed, so he just gave up.
No,
Here we go.
There's that too.
Everybody said, you're not doing it. Why should we?
Yeah. You can't practice what you preach, man.
Yeah.
But
isn't there a word for that? Like hypocrite?
Been called that before, right?
But hey, I'm glad you're here because in the last podcast, I actually shouted you out, and I was trying to remember the syrup maker story, and actually you were the one that told me that about how the name itself for the high school team and for the school in general, how it came about. And I didn't want to botch the story, so I wanted to wait until you came on the show and have you tell Matt, because Matt doesn't know the story, and have you tell him.
Sure.
So I will let you have the floor. You go ahead and you tell Matt how the name syrup maker came about for the city of Carroll.
So, I mean, obviously, syrup maker just one of the most unique mascots
I don't
ever.
think there's another name in the country. Like,
No.
there's no other syrup
there's
maker in the
not.
country.
No, it actually made ESPN.
Yeah,
one time.
ESPN recognized it back in like '86 as the most unique mascot in the country, and then actually recently, maybe back in the mid 2000s, somewhere around 2010 or so, there was some more recognition that came from there. But anyway, the name, and again, I'm telling this story from, you know, what was told to me, what I was taught coming up. Somebody like Michael Best may have a lot more detail on it, but basically the old syrup plant, which obviously is shut down now, this at the north end of the stadium, they were running 24 hours back then. It was Roddenberry syrup. A lot of people get it confused with the Karo, K-A-R-O syrup. That's totally different. But anyway, there was a game. I think they were the pretty sure it was the Carroll Tigers, I believe, were the mascot at the time. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize, but I believe that's what it was. But there was a game on a Friday night that it was just pouring rain. And the workers over at the syrup plant, they would, like on the line, packaging and bottling syrup, they would wear ponchos, and on the back of them it just said Roddenberry syrup, basically. So they're out there, I guess, on break. It's pouring rain, and they see the kids down there just getting drenched. So they take them some ponchos.
Oh, cool.
They put them on. I mean, all they're trying to do is just give them a raincoat, something to keep them dry. And from that, I can only imagine what the conversation was in the stand. You know, look, there's a bunch of syrup makers down there, or whatever the joke was.
That's
and
pretty cool,
and
though.
it stuck.
Yeah.
And they adopted that name, but literally from just one night, from that syrup plant, taking those ponchos over there, coats or whatever it was, that's where it came from. And man, it has been, it is stuck, and is just a point of pride for this town. I mean, it's. When you say it, like, it doesn't, syrup makers doesn't sound weird to me, but
well,
to,
I mean,
to everybody else, I mean, it's just.
Well, like that's what me and Brandon talked about, because coming from Alabama, which I grew up over in Donaldsonville, so we were Seminole County Indians. We moved to Slocum, and we were the Slocum Red Tops, which is still another form of Indian. And so we were getting ready to move. I was talking to somebody, and I said, I said they're the Carroll syrup makers, and they're like, what is that? I was like, I really don't know. I was like, I'm going to find out, but it does. I mean, it sounds kind of weird at first.
Yeah.
But I've heard little bits and pieces of that story, but I mean, that's just actually really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean that's where it came from, and it hasn't always been around. It was just that one night, I guess, and it stuck from there. So
cool deal. Yeah. So I remember hearing that story, and I was just like, wow, that's like, you would have thought like it would have been something completely different, and it's like it was just as simple as putting ponchos on players, and then boom, there it is. So, cool. So, as being, and I'm kind of moving the conversation a little bit. So, you're State Farm agent, but you're also now. What is your exact title at Providence?
I guess my title is associate pastor. I obviously spend more time in student ministry. Yeah. But I certainly do everything I can to support and help keep Brother Sam straight. So,
and that's a job in itself.
Yes. That's full time. That's not bivocational. Yeah. So,
I'm surprised like deacons and finance committee hadn't gotten together. I'm like, we got to get this guy raised.
They have. We should see our budget.
So I've always wanted to ask, because all I've ever known, other than my little interim position that I did, which was still kind of full time too when I was at the church at that time. All I've ever known is full time, and I always get the question. You always get it from students. Matt, I'm sure you got it. Sam, I'm sure you got it too. I still have students to this day that will come up to me and they go, "So, besides you preaching on Wednesdays and Sundays, what do you do for a job?"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
they don't get it.
No, they don't have a clue.
And so I have one student. He's an eighth grader at Thomas County Central. Shout out to Alex. He is convinced that I just sit in my office all day and watch YouTube and do nothing and throw some games together for Wednesday nights. So, I was like, man, what do I got to do to convince this guy that I
don't know, but I want that job though. that's what I want.
Yeah, sign me up.
I came back one time and I was like, it's not just YouTube, bro, it's Facebook, and it was like shocker. And so, but I've always wanted to ask guys who are bivocational, full-time job, and then here's the thing. I don't think there's no such thing as bivocational. I think if you're in ministry, you're in full time. Like you're in it all the time. I mean, you're devoted to it, especially if you're called to it. You have a heart for ministry. Yeah. You can have the title bivocational all you want, but it's full time. You are.
Well, what ends up happening is, you and I hadn't really talked about this, Brandon, but I was actually bivocational for a while too. And so before you actually really start talking about this, Brian, I have a lot of respect for you. To me, when it comes down to it, bivocational is more about the financial side of it than it is the ministry side of it. Exactly. I remember for me, I was working full time at a Christian bookstore as a manager. I was working part time at the church as the youth pastor. I was going to one college part time and another college part time. So I was 2 schools and 2 jobs, married, trying to do it all. I mean, and it's crazy tough. So
it is tough. I was kind of going to say what Brandon just said about it is bivocational, right? I mean, I do have another job. Thankfully, I think it takes the right situation too.
Yeah.
And thankfully, God has blessed me with a full-time job that I have flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
If I need to close my door and study, I can.
Mm-hmm.
If I need to get away, I can. So, and I mean, I know there are bivocational guys out there that may not have as much flexibility, but I think it's one of the things that has really worked for me in my situation is being able to do what I need to do to be effective in ministry. One of my biggest fears when I jumped into, because at Providence, I mean, I really just grown there, from just visiting and becoming a member to beginning to teach Sunday school after some years, and then being called to be a deacon, and then being called into the ministry, and then actually coming on staff. It's been over 12 years, and there were times where I was asked to do certain things, and I wasn't in a place where I could. And since I was able to open my office about 5 years ago, and that flexibility is there, I've been able to fully engage in bivocational ministry. But what I always tell people is, I mean, technically it is part-time ministry, but just like you guys know, I mean, anybody that is called to preach, that is called to be in ministry, the weight of it is full-time.
Yeah.
And even though I may not be able to log as many ministry hours as you guys, I feel the same weight that you do in responsibility
for sure,
to teach these kids and to lead them. But it's tough. It keeps the schedule full.
Yeah, and it does, because I mean, especially like I know in my life, like what I found was while I was at my other job, I spent most of my time thinking about those students, thinking about, like, man, one, of course, and we'll all agree to this, like, I'm king when it comes to God. I don't even know why you even have me here. like why would you use me? But then to think but yet, God, you've given me the opportunity to invest in it. Because I mean, I was at the bookstore, but it was actually kind of cool because the conversations I would have with people, those would all of a sudden become lesson topics for me and things like that. The good and the bad of working in a Christian bookstore is something else, but it takes a special person for sure.
I was always wanted to ask too, like, do you find it beneficial in the bivocational side of things? Because I know, like, again, for me and Sam and Matt, feel free to chime in on this. Like, when you're in an office at church all day, there's sometimes you can get, I feel, and maybe it's just me, I don't know, but you can almost feel like you're kind of like in this lull.
Right.
And it's just like, you keep doing the same thing or,
Well,
something.
I'll tell you what, I'll just go ahead and interrupt you there. So I actually, before I came to Carroll, I actually got out of ministry for a little while and took a break. And what was supposed to have been about a 6-month break for me and my wife turned into about a 2.5-year just battle where God dealt with me in a lot of different areas in life. And I worked at a golf course over in Dothan and ended up working my way up as a superintendent. But I'll tell you this, like, I will go ahead and say yes. I think sometimes it's very easy to kind of get sheltered into our offices, because I went from working in church all day, every day, to getting cussed out in a sand bunker on number 9 Highlands golf course.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, do you find it, like, being able to, and I don't mean this in a bad way. Like, when I say, like, being able to, like, break away and you have your other job, do you find it refreshing that you can kind of maybe, like, a spiritual, in a sense, reset and then jump right back in?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I mean, and again, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but in insurance, a typical day for me may start out like Matt just said. I mean, I may have an unhappy customer, right? I may be dealing with somebody that just had a house fire, or somebody that is in the middle of a claim that it's just driving them crazy and they need my help, right? And I look at those all as opportunities to be the light for Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing makes me feel better or nothing helps me grow more than to deal with someone that is unhappy with me or something my office did, and to be able to treat them with respect, treat them the way that Jesus would treat them, and to see them change, to see their tone change and their mood change. I mean, it's a mission field out there for sure.
Oh, 100%.
So
it's almost like, when we encourage our people, when you're a Christian, be a Christian in all you do.
Absolutely.
Not just Sunday from 11 to 12. No, be a Christian in your marriage relationship. Be a Christian as a parent.
Absolutely.
Be a Christian at the job.
Yeah.
And, I've done some bivocational ministry as well. And so you just want I think what Bryan is saying is you want to be a minister no matter what lane you're in.
Yeah.
100%. And I think, you did a live stream yesterday last night, and I watched it, and it was like you almost talking exactly what we're talking about right now. No matter what you're doing, you are called to ministry.
Yeah.
No matter what it is you're doing. It doesn't have to just be vocational ministry. We are
Yeah.
all called to minister. We are all called to present the gospel.
Your life preaches a sermon and sings a song.
Yep.
That's right.
That's exactly right. So cool. Yeah, I've always wanted to ask you that, and
Sure.
just what that looks like, because I've always ran into bivocational guys. Now, do you find it hard to, like, there's some things that us full-time guys can do that maybe say bivocational guys can't do? Like, for example, I can, whenever I want to, just go have lunch with a student or go see a band concert in the middle of the day, something like that. Now, do you find that, like, you wish you could do that? Or
I actually have a funny story around that. Not long after Matt got here, and I don't know how quickly you started going and eating lunch with the students up at the high school, but one of my students took a picture of you sitting at the table with their students, and they were like, "Why don't you come do this with us?" So I owe them lunch when we get back to the thing with bivocational ministry that's challenging. Plus, having 3 little girls at home and a wife that you want to spend time with as well. Sometimes it can get tough because,
sure.
I want to be at things for them. And in that, sometimes I'm not able to be at things for students. But, man, that's one of the reasons why I try to be engaged on Friday nights at the football game and be there supporting those students that are participating. But to answer the question, no, I don't get to do it as much as I want or as much as you guys are able to. But I certainly do try to be as engaged as I can be with them. Usually it's more by text and trying to reach out to them than actually physically being able to be there. So it's definitely tough.
Yeah, and I would say too, like, kind of going what he was saying, I think sometimes just being physically there, just being your presence being known is, that sometimes that goes a long way, and sometimes more than you would even imagine. So, well, cool. Like I said, I always wanted to get your thoughts on that. So, I'm gonna jump over to Sam for a second. So you and I have been here in Carroll roughly around the same amount of time. I came in January of 2018, and I don't, were you before or a little after?
We come in December of 17.
Okay.
So, right there.
Yeah, right at the same time. So, so where you're not originally from here though. Where are you originally from?
Waycross.
Waycross. Okay, so we talked about in the last episode, we talked about just kind of our transition from, Alabama, Florida, and what it was like for us. I've always wanted to know, what was your, first initial thoughts of Carroll, and, how'd you land here, and what's your thoughts now?
Definitely a smaller town. There's, that has pros and that has cons.
Yeah.
One of the pros is that just that small town. Even though Waycross is small, it's not like Atlanta or nothing like that, but still, just even a smaller town, setting where a lot of people know each other, and it's kind of hard to hide from that. Or everybody know that can be good, that can be bad, both. But just having that small town feel, I think is pretty cool.
Cool.
Now, how far is Waycross from here?
It's about 2.5 hours.
Okay, not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're able? Do you ever go back to Waycross or anything?
Oh yeah. We go back to see family.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you have family there. Oh, okay.
Prior to quarantine, we, a lot more often.
So you were actually born and raised in Waycross.
Waycross.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool deal. That was one of the things that we, like I said, we said before, we shared, our stories. I knew you were not from Carroll, and I always wanted to get. And Bryan, you being from Carroll, I wonder, has things changed a whole lot? How long have you lived in Carroll?
I'm 35, and other than being away for 3 or 4 years at college, I've been here. So,
oh, gotcha.
It's changed a lot. I say it's changed a lot. It's grown a little bit, I guess you could say. I remember the days when there were very, very few restaurants to choose from, and some may say even now there's not as many, but it certainly has grown. But it's Carroll. It's the same little town it's always been. I think the people here are. It's a hospitality city.
Yeah.
It's some of the nicest people you ever meet right here in this community, and they take pride in that. And I don't know, man. I was one of those that when I was in high school, was like, I just want to get out of here. I think a lot of our students feel that.
Sure.
And then when you go, it's
you-
kind of
then
like,
you miss
I
it.
just want to
Yeah.
go home, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so we're happy to be
Yeah,
here.
well, Brandon and I, we talked about it, and I brought up in the last episode, Principal Loki, I talked with him, and because I kind of came in, I've always in ministry, and when I say always, I haven't always, I've tried to be, I should say, like one of those that just, I'm a go-getter. Like I believe, especially in student ministry, and you guys can relate, you've got to get where the students are.
Mhm.
The students aren't busting the walls of the church down, so we've got to get to where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember calling Principal Loki and just saying, hey, what can I do? I'm new
Mhm.
to the town. What can I do? And so he and I talked for a little while, and he ended up making the comment. He said, Carroll is a great little town. And he said, in a few months from now, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. It didn't even take a few months. Like, we
Right.
just fell in love with this little town. And it's been a lot of fun, even though this whole quarantine thing has happened. But I mean, like my wife and I, we talked about it last night. I mean, we just love being here.
Mhm.
It's a cool little place, and the people have been like so supportive and so loving towards us as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I know when Jesse and I we first moved here, we're spoiled in Lakeland because I mean Lakeland's it's such a bigger town. You pretty much have anything you ever want there, and it was crazy is like when I was in high school, everybody was like, I can't wait to get out of Lakeland. It's so boring. And then like I moved to Carroll, and I was like, you don't realize like all the stuff that you had in Lakeland. I'm like,
Yeah.
because like when Jesse and I first moved here, I thought it was just fried chicken and Mexican food. Like that's it. That's all this is here to eat.
Is there
And-
something else?
yeah. But I just was like, man, this is, so, and when I was in college at Liberty, there was a Buffalo Wild Wings right across the street of Liberty University. And I think I spent every dollar that I ever earned at Buffalo. It got so bad to the point people for Christmas were getting me Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards. Well, hey, when you go back to college, you got stuff to go buy.
And you didn't complain.
Yeah, and so now the only time I get to go to Buffalo Wild Wings, I got to drive an hour south to Tallahassee to go get it. And so, but it's okay. I mean, and I mentioned this before. Cairo, though, by far best place to raise a family. I mean, we live in a quiet little area, in quiet little neighborhood, and so, and I enjoy it. I just enjoy the town in general. So, going back to the original conversation, though, so and I don't know if everybody knows this that's listening, but Sam, you actually used to be a youth pastor.
That's right.
That's right. Okay,
That's right.
so and then I've always wanted to ask this to those guys like that. So the transition from youth pastor to pastor.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, I think that God may have prepared me for some of that, even in my youth ministry transitions. First little church I served at was primarily bus ministry and bus ministry kids.
Yeah.
And that's a special group of kids. You got to minister to them in a whole nother way.
Oh, absolutely.
Getting on their level and just understanding they may even, drop an inappropriate word at church. you
Yeah.
know, and you just have to love them through that.
That's
and,
right.
And that was just a volunteer position. I had recently surrendered to the call to preach and was friends with the pastor there, and it just worked out where that's where I kind of got my start, on the job training, really,
Yeah.
under him, and then transitioned that to a full-time church on the other side of town that was, a more traditional, stable setting, one of the bigger probably groups in Waycross. And I didn't really feel appropriate for either one. Like, God, how am I going to minister, to these kids, the broken kids on one front, and then the cool kids on the other side. But
Yeah.
man, God, I found to be true what He told Paul: "My grace is sufficient for you."
Yep.
And He helped me and made me strong in my weakness, turned it to strength. But then the transition from actually going from youth pastor to senior pastor, a little farming church. I can remember one of the first Wednesday night Bible studies I led there as pastor, and I had studied and I'd prepared and had my message. But in youth ministry, you've always got the go-to illustrations. You've always got, the party scene, the popularity thing. You've always got the parenting thing that you just kind of hit kids right where they're at and try to apply Scripture to that. And I remember on my first Bible studies on Wednesday night, with the average age was probably 75 or years old, I began to understand I'm gonna have to get a whole new bag of illustrations that's gonna connect with these folks, But it's amazing that a lot of them are dealing with the same things.
Yeah, that's right.
They deal with in-law problems. They deal with fussing with their neighbors about a property line or whatever the case may be. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so they've got issues too. You just got to shape it and frame it through the lens of Scripture and
Yeah.
apply it to their lives. Any message should have application to it
Absolutely.
for the audience.
I remember the previous church I was at. The pastor there, he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna let you preach on Father's Day, Sunday."
Wow.
And I was like, I thought, I was like, wow, this is gonna be awesome. And so, and I'm, gosh, I was 19. know nothing. I'm still in my sophomore year of college. And I'm still going through my ministry degree at Liberty, and here's the funny thing though. Looking back now, I was like, I knew absolutely nothing. But then I was like, I know it all.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm
Perspective.
it's like I'm Paul Jr. Walking through the halls of the church, and so it was kind of like a similar thing. I was like, I got up on stage, and I was like, this is gonna be the best message these people have ever heard, and we quickly realized, most people are 65 and older, and I'm like, oh wow, they know a lot more than I do, and here's this like little baseline message, and I just.
Well, what's funny is when you have what you think is a good illustration or a good story or a good explanation of a verse or a word, and you hit that point in the message, and they just look at you like, and it's like, that was the best I had, I can't do it. Let's close in prayer now.
Here's my haymaker of a punchline, and then they're just like crickets, and you're like, oh wow, okay, great.
You get that really hard sandbag lump in your throat.
Yeah. After that first lesson, I was just like, I gotta really buckle down and bring it. So, but yeah. So, and how long were you in youth ministry then?
About 7 years.
7 years. And how long have you been full-time pastor?
About 6 years.
Okay, so cool. So you're kind of well into that transition then.
Oh yeah.
I guess if you didn't do one, and knowing you've had even time in both, I mean, have you enjoyed one over the other, or do you like them both equally, or I mean, I don't know.
I like them both. I love them both, and both have advantages to them.
Sure.
One of the advantages, if you get frustrated with a middle school boy, you can tell him exactly how you feel. Once you build the relationship.
Yeah.
Once he knows that you care, and then you can speak into his life, and you say, "Dude, man, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
You hadn't been here in 3 weeks. What's going on?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when a senior adult lady maybe does something, or a patriarch of the church, that senior man that everybody looks to, may do something or say something, or you want to call something, you have to walk on much,
what are you doing?
easier. Yeah, you can't call it out, and you have to be much more gentle.
Yeah. Jim over here hasn't been to church in a month.
That's right. Yeah, you can't do that. That's not going to go well.
Yeah, there was a video on Facebook. I have to find it. There's an actual video, an actual church service of a pastor doing that. And he walked in, he got halfway through the sanctuary. I have to find it. And I know someone listening, they've heard it before, or they've seen it before.
I know exactly
the pastor, he walks up, and
I think we've seen that.
He tells this couple, he's like, "You two stand up."
He calls them out.
Yeah, he's like, "I married you two."
Pastor Jim.
Yeah, he's like, "You two hadn't been here in 6 months."
You're the sorriest church member I got.
That's exactly what he says. He's like, "You're the sorriest church member I got." I was like, "Oh my jeez." So
I would have loved to have been in there.
yeah. So well, cool. And I've always wanted to see that transition, because all I've ever known is youth ministry, and it always used to drive me crazy when people are like, "Oh, youth ministry is just a stepping stone job." I don't believe in that. I don't think that at all. And I finally got some confirmation. One of my first youth ministry professors at Liberty, he was like, "Don't ever let I didn't even ask for this. He just said it in the middle of one of his lectures. He's like, "Don't let anyone ever tell you that youth ministry is a stepping stone job." He's like, "There are people who are called to youth ministry and youth ministry alone, and God will use you in mighty ways."
Yeah, that's right.
And so that was confirmation to me, because I was still, when I was, I don't, in my family, I have a lot of great Christian leaders to look up to in my family, but there's really nobody in my family that's in ministry. I'm the first person in ministry. In fact, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and so it was just a complete different transition for me. And so when I got to Liberty, I'm 12 hours away from home. I'm trying to find my way, and then I was like, I keep hearing all this stuff like, "Oh, you want to be a youth minister. Oh, so you're trying to be a pastor later on in life?" And in my head, I'm like, "Oh, no." But then outside, I'm like, is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, am I supposed to go into, whatever? So
I would say it can turn into that, but that don't need to be the goal.
Yeah.
And I think I can speak to that with a little bit of authority, in that when God called me to ministry, He called me to preach.
Yeah.
And that's why I fought it for so long. I was like, God, that means going to mean pastoring. I cannot do that. I will not do that.
Yeah.
And of course He won, and I threw the white flag of surrender up. But I wasn't thinking about youth ministry. I wasn't thinking about that being entry level. It's just the way it worked out.
Yeah.
I bumped into a pastor and said, "Hey, I need a youth minister. Come be my youth minister." And I was like, "Well, God, I told you I would surrender and let you fill in the details, so you're filling in the details now."
Yeah.
But the whole time I did youth ministry, I wasn't thinking, "Boy, I'll be glad to wrap this up and graduate on to the bigger position." Yeah. That was never in my thought. I just did it. I just let it. And then God began to make it clear.
Yeah.
After about 7 years, and He began to show me little signs. that I'm going to transition you now. So it wasn't a me thing; it was a God thing.
Yeah.
Well, and at the end of the day, I mean, we all, that's actually a question I had for Bryan too. Is, like we've surrendered, and I had somebody kind of, it was actually a mentor of mine before he passed away. He always tried to make it very clear in my life. You surrender to preach. God will bring the audience. Like it doesn't
100%.
matter the audience. You just preach. And so like that's what I was curious about, like, Bryan, and what you touched on a little bit, like as far as like how you actually surrender to youth ministry, like how that came about.
Sure. I mean, again, I'm there at Providence. I mean, my family's been there, I guess, since 2008-ish, I guess. And again, just the men at that church, the pastor at the church at the time, they saw something in me. And honestly, I mean, I didn't go with an agenda. I mean, at that point, pastoring in any capacity was not on my radar at all.
Yeah.
But as they begin to give me opportunities, I know that one thing God has always blessed me with is the ability to stand in front of people and talk.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I get nervous, and just like anybody else, when you're preaching or teaching or anything in front of a group, but it doesn't bother me. Like I'll do it, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that God had blessed me with that ability. And then it was kind of like, what are you going to do with it? Well, I'll never forget some of the guys at the church came to me and said, now, you got to remember at this time, I'm probably 25-ish, 26-ish, and they're like, hey, do you want to lead men's ministry? And I'm thinking, okay, everybody in here's got me beat by a solid, 20, 30 years. Are you sure? But I did, and I learned a lot through just leading the men's ministry and being able to start looking into some curriculum and teaching, and then not long after that started doing some Sunday school stuff. And then the call to be a deacon really came before the call to be a pastor, and I served as a deacon for a while, and then we were without a youth pastor, and my wife and I kind of jumped in there in a volunteer capacity for a while, and then the pastor that was there, one of my good friends, Chad Cooper, he mentored me, talked to me a lot about the growth that he was. It was one of those things where I think he was seeing it more than I was. Yeah. And he was telling me, I think you may be called. And, we prayed, my wife and I, we prayed and prayed. And ultimately, I mean, it came to the point where I agreed that, I think there is a call here on my life in some capacity. Now I know, I've got the State Farm deal and all this going on, but I think God, wants me to minister. And, students, I'm kind of like Brandon. I mean, for me personally now, I don't know what God will ever do in my life, but I don't have a desire to be a senior pastor. Yeah. I don't, whether it be by vocational or full-time or anything, I feel like with my story and the things that I've been through in my life, I really struggled as a teenager, and made a lot of choices that didn't honor God, even though I was a Christian, raised in a Christian home. Yeah. And God has given me a heart for young people, and He's given me a platform to be able to teach. He's given me the ability to be able to teach. So for me, it's just kind of been a long, slow process, and then accepting the call, and it was crazy after that. I mean, accepted the call to preach, and they brought me on staff officially. And then Brother Chad was called away not too terribly long after that, and I found myself in an interim role. Yeah. So, it really taught me a lot. I learned a lot through that time. And then, of course, Brother Sam was called by the church, and he has jumped in there and mentored me and helped me. He's become a great friend to me and a resource. Certainly just God is continuing to work, but it's been a long process.
Yeah. I've always, I ran into that too, kind of what you were saying. Like, part of my passion, what drives me as a youth minister, is the fact that when I was in youth ministry from 6th to 12th grade, I had 7 youth pastors walk through the door of the church that I grew up in. Yep, been there. I mean, our church was just a revolving door for youth pastors, and it was so hard. And like, as a young person who, because it was about my sophomore, junior year where I really felt the call to ministry. I really felt like, this is what God wants me to do, and I never could have anybody to really cling to and really, confide in and trust in, and because they were just like one after the other. Like I think the longest one we had was like a year and a half, and then it was gone. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. So, but I figured it out. I surrounded myself with good people down in up in Liberty, and and one of the things that I guess that always got me was when something happened, or if I didn't do something quite right in youth ministry. Even now, when something doesn't happen that way, I've even had people say like, "Oh, just wait till you're a pastor, you'll understand." I'm like, well, I'm not in this just to become a pastor. Like kind of like what you're saying, I'm called to preach. I'm called to bring God's word, and I always made a kind of a pact to myself was like, I never want to see another student go through 7 different youth pastors in their time. Like if I can be as stable and as a solid rock for somebody else, like that's what I want to do, especially for the students. And the students, man, they're just a powerhouse for churches, and and we talked about it at D Now, and we saw kind of what God did in our D Now, man. If that could be something our students could cling to here in Grady County, man, it would change this town. It would change the world if they would just dive into what God is saying to them. So again, I've always, it's cool to see the transition from youth pastor to pastor, but I do believe there are people who are just called straight to youth ministry, and there's people just called straight to be a pastor. But all in all, I believe God already has that ordained. God already knows. So cool. One of the other things that I think we needed to hit on real quick before this episode wraps up is just the fact of the current situation that we're all in. The fact of, the whole COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, has, greatly affected churches, greatly affected how we do things, greatly affect how we minister. Everybody's now online services, things like that. And so I just, feel free from y'all's church's standpoint, just kind of, we'll talk on some things, and I more so wanted to ask, like, how will things look as we return? Because we're getting close, especially in the state of Georgia, things are kind of slowly starting to reopen, and people have their opinions on that, which we won't get to that. That'll be another episode. But I'm interested to hear from another pastor and youth pastor's perspective. Like, how do you think the return is going to be for all kinds of people? Whoever wants to take that can go.
I think part of the return is going to be as hard to predict as, if you'd asked going into this thing, what's it going to look like in 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I think we're going to learn that as we go too. Yeah. I hate to say this, and I hope I'm wrong. I'd be glad to come back and say I was wrong, but I think we may be developing some folks that are Facebook and digital world viewers only. Yeah. And if you're listening to this, I would discourage that.
Absolutely.
That is good if you're at the beach for the week, or if you had to work a Sunday unexpected. Yeah. Or if you just got another pastor that you want to follow too, not because you're upset with your pastor. Yeah. But if you just want to supplement with another pastor and use those platforms to get all you can for the gospel, but don't do that exclusively. Right. And so I think initially, certainly the senior adult congregation is going to be nervous. Listen, understandably so. Yeah, sure. When you look at the numbers and all that it's meant for them. And so my encouragement for our church, we're trying to give that group as much grace as possible. And just tell them, let them hear it from our lips. Only come back when we're talking to a generation that don't miss and don't feel good about missing, and looks down and speaks direct to those of us that have not been all in at times. Yeah. And so it's just a different world, though, and we have to tell them, come back when you feel comfortable. Continue to watch online if you can. We'll bring you a CD. I did that the other day. Dropped a CD off at a senior adult. Cool. Kept my distance from her, laid it on the trunk of her car. I said, "There's your CD." And, that's awesome. And she called me back and said she listened to it, and all like that. But I don't think I can give you a specific answer. Here's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be as unpredictable as the process of going through it.
Yeah. I think what we do know is it's going to be different.
Absolutely. When you touch on a good point too earlier, because you talked about how you want to discourage people in that sense of you don't want people to get comfortable with just sitting at home and watching it on Facebook Live or whatever. We want to encourage people to come back, because I always think that's a debate in the church world, because I hear it from all people all the time. It's like, I was like, hey, you weren't at church last week. Oh, we were at the beach, but we still got our Jesus. We watched on TV or whatever. Yeah. Okay, that's great. But, God calls us to be amongst each other. God wants us back together.
Well, the Bible says don't forsake the assembling of yourselves.
Exactly, exactly. Right. And so there's an importance there on that. And I do believe we'll get back together. However, I do think things will be, different. I mean, you look at the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, they're talking about, not even opening up, bathrooms and stuff like that. So it's just like, how do you you want to do your own thing as a church, but how do you still follow the guidelines and not, because we're not doing anything out of fear, but we want to make sure everybody does things the right way.
I think it'd be a great opportunity for the people of God to give to each other the same amount of grace that God has given us.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
if you're in an age bracket or if you're in a situation where you can comfortably come back, come on, and don't be checking a personal role or a mental role of who's not here and I'm better than they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Squash all that. Walk in humility.
Yeah.
And just extend grace, and maybe call that person and not give them a backhand.
Yeah. Now more
Where
than
were
ever.
you at today?
Yeah.
Say, listen, we missed you being there, but we understand. And if you need anything, we're praying for you. And even just pray with them on the phone. Have a 20-second prayer. And pray with them, and just be a minister of the gospel, even as a layperson.
Yeah, because now is definitely not the time to be bashing people with everything.
They're carrying enough without putting that weight on them.
Exactly. But I've heard it from our own church people where they're like, "Hey, we're desperate to come back. Like we want to come back. We want to be back." And it was funny. There's a couple in our church, like middle-aged couple, and the wife was like, "I'm ready to come back." More so because I just don't want to be stuck in the house with my husband all day. So,
a pastor friend of mine said the other day that normally homesick means that you want to go home. Right now, and he was using it as homesick for the house. He was calling it the house of God.
Yeah.
And he was saying right now the homesickness is because we're tired of being at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see that, and that's like my thing. Like because I wondered, what's it gonna look like? Are we gonna have this wave of people that, let's face it, generally when like a crisis hits, there's always gonna be that wave that comes through, or are we gonna see, like, you don't want to necessarily talk about it from a number perspective, but in a sense, that's kind of what we're doing. Are we going to see that really big wave of people who are saying, I've got to get to church? Or are we going to see more of that? And I agree with you, Sam. I think it's hard to really know until we get here. I know just from things I've heard people, even in Walmart talk about, there's people that are very skittish. And I think about it with my two kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-month-old. Are we ready to get them out there and expose them to, what could very well be, or, do we say, what, man, God's got it under control and we believe that, so there is that line between like cautious and like you said, fear, so it's tough.
Yeah.
When we communicated it to our church
I watched those
this week, we're right now, if nothing changes between now and Sunday week, we're going to do an in-person service that Sunday morning. What we try to communicate is, this couldn't be further from a one-size-fits-all situation. Like every single family, every single person has to make the decision that is best for them. We're just, I think our heartbeat is we're just offering it.
Yeah.
Look, if you, like Brother Sam said, if you are healthy and you are in the age bracket, you're not health compromised, you feel comfortable, come on, be with us. And really that's just more of the mindset of, we know we're not going to have everybody there. We're probably not going to have 50% of our church there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We don't want our people pointing and looking and saying, well, why didn't they come? There's nothing wrong with them. Hey, I even said in the video, I don't know that my kids will be back on May 3rd.
I remember seeing that.
Right? So even, and I'm on staff there. Yeah. So if anybody wants to point the finger, point it at me, but everybody's got to make the decision for themselves. We need to respect each other. And,
for sure.
And even from church to church, because there'll be churches that won't choose to come back then. And, I certainly hope that we all, and I think we will, support each other's decisions and know that even from church to church, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, too. Pastor Chris and I, we were talking about even this morning in his office that no matter what you do, there's always going to be, and I'm not trying to, offend or bash anybody, but there's always going to be someone that's like, oh, you opened up too early, or you didn't open up early enough, you opened up too late. Yeah. And so I think what people need to understand from a minister standpoint, we're trying to do what's best for our church. We're trying to do what's best for our people. And as a pastor, as the shepherd, you're trying to do what's best for the flock.
Right. And when you say, first of all, if you ask 10 people, you might get 11 opinions right now.
Yeah, that's right.
But the best way to shape it to where it touches everybody is use caution. Don't come if you don't feel like it, but the doors will be open. And then upon coming, we'll have some guidelines, the distancing, the available hand sanitizer, the the Clorox wipes after it's over, or spray whatever's available to clean your area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no hugging, no holy kisses on this day. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or any day.
yeah, that's right.
And here's the thing, I in kind of putting a lighter mood on the topic, Southern Baptist, man, we put our pride and joy on the meet and greet time, and
that's right.
as of right now, it doesn't look like
That's
we're going to be
going away.
having that for a while,
That's
and
going away.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
In that video, I said we normally show love by hugging. Let's now show love by not hugging.
yeah. Here's the
Yeah.
thing, because you're in a Southern Baptist church, because no one listens to the first opening song of worship because they know the meet and greet's coming. Everybody's looking around. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, there's Brother Johnny over there, and I'm getting ready to go shake his hand.
No one is more thankful than the introvert right now that,
Yeah.
that this is going
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. There's so
Very
many
true.
fist bumps by introverts going on right now. It's like, yes, yes, yes. So, yeah, and so I was always curious, even as, three youth guys in the room. I mean, you get concerned. We live in a generation where students are so concerned and consumed by their phones and social media and what's going on. It's, and all we've been doing is feeding into that through social media with our, all the different platforms of putting out
Right.
media and sermons and things like that. And, honestly, I don't know if nervous is the right word to say, but it does make me feel some type of way when it comes to, how are the students going to respond? And I think more than anything, my prayer is that the parents are joined in too. And the parents are like, hey, no, we're all going back as a family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And because the moment you leave something up to the students, you give them an inch, they're taking a mile.
Yeah.
And so, my prayer is that, from the whole family aspect, from the top down, dad to the youngest, where everybody's all in, ready to get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're concerned, definitely stay away, but don't use it as an excuse to
That's
stay
right.
away.
That's right.
If you feel,
Yeah,
for those, especially students and younger folks.
exactly. Yeah. So, and, I think a lot of things are gonna change. Like I just had to announce to our students in our church that our camp for the summer got canceled, and so now it's, what do we do? And I know
Yeah.
Matt and I have talked about, hey, why don't we try to do something together like a D now? And that's something that we're trying to talk with to other
Yeah.
youth ministers and stuff like that. And so that, which kind of leads me to my next thing real quick is, what the importance of churches in the same area, the same county, same town, whatever. I believe there's a sense of importance of us coming together and helping each other out, because here's the deal: whether you want to agree with me or not, there is that underlying of like competitiveness, and I hate to say that because it should not be that way.
No.
And every pastor, they won't talk about it, but I mean I will. I mean we do it whether we like it or not, whether it's even outward. I mean we think it, and I've tried to do my very best job to check myself. And Matt and I, we talk about it all the time. It's like we want to help each other out.
Yeah.
Like just the other day, he was like, "Hey, I'm trying to do a video for my students. Can you help me with this?" And I did the same thing back. And so, I mean, I guess your thoughts on that is like, the importance of churches helping out and helping each other and coming together and doing that. I mean, I haven't really asked any pastors yet, but I wanted to see.
We're always stronger together, and that competitive thing feeds our pride.
Sure.
Pride is sin.
Yeah.
It needs to be renounced.
Yeah.
We
Absolutely.
cut up about the first place and say, and it's all in good fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I can promise you, we need to remember to walk in humility.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
I remember saying, because still to this day, this year's D now in Grady County was, I mean,
Was awesome.
yeah, God moved in so many ways. And I remember, I think it was the sermon that I preached, I remember saying, hey, I want you to know that, I'm not a big numbers person. I rejoice if a student at Pine Level accepts Christ.
Right.
The same at
Sure,
Providence.
right.
I mean, I rejoice in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's kind of the idea we want to share our students too,
Well-
and they're going to look to us for the example.
What would be healthy to remember is that we are in competition, but we're on the same team.
yeah,
That's
we're on
right.
the exactly,
You know,
exactly.
The
And I-
enemies are competitive.
And I
We're
think
trying-
sometimes we get it messed up. It's like, oh, we're competing against each other. No. We need to be competitive, but we're in this together.
we're teammates.
Yeah, and so and I kind of alluded to in that sermon, I was like, man, how cool would it be if a Providence student walked past a First Baptist student and said, hey, how's it going? Can I pray for you? And how's church going? Are you still involved? Stuff like that. Like those are the kind of conversations I want to see around the lunch
Yeah.
table
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I think as a time such as this, that's how important that is for us to.
I can
be,
remember in the first church I served as pastor on a Wednesday night, I said, hey, let's pray for, and I named the church. Let's pray for this church. And somebody actually raised their hand. Is everything okay there? Is their pastor leaving? I was like, as far as I know, it's all great. Well, let's just pray for them.
Yeah.
Let's just pray that they'll reach their community, and let's pray that they'll,
Yeah.
you know.
And here's where my heart breaks. It doesn't take long to talk with me to know that like my heart breaks for the church. I love students, but like my heart is for the church. And I think we've gotten to a point where we've started building fences around our own personal churches.
Yeah.
And we're scared to get across those lines.
Yeah.
When in reality, I mean, like, golly, you look at what Paul wrote in the book of Romans chapter 10. I mean, he's talking about how the gospel was not only just for the Jews, but also for the Gentiles.
Yeah.
I mean, and in that context, I mean, the Jews thought the Gentiles were dogs. They're like, so, you know, you could imagine what their response would have been to that. But, I mean, he was saying, look, the gospel is for all people. And I sometimes worry that our churches have lost sight of that.
Yeah.
And even more so now, do we need to be standing up in that gap to say, no, this is not how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And to come from the positive side, there's nothing more beautiful than when a pastor stands with another pastor, unified.
Yeah.
You know, even in the simple things. I'll never
Yeah.
forget the first time Jim Weaver took me to. Matter of fact, Jim Weaver introduced me to Jonah's Restaurant in Thomasville. And
That place is off the chain.
My life's never been the same.
Yeah.
But just to sit there with him, he wasn't in any hurry, you
Yeah,
know. And I know he's a
absolutely.
busy man, but to spend 2 hours with Jim Weaver when I hadn't been here long, and you know, meeting Chris Allen, him and I rode off to conferences together, and it's just awesome.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and I love that. You know, we've, you know, sometimes there's conferences in Valdosta or whatever, but to see, like, when I walk in, I see y'all there, or see what I love that, and we can, you know, hang out and
or carpool when you can, and
and we throw ideas off each other, because what I live for are the moments like that last night at D-Now, where I mean the altar was slam full.
Yeah.
And I love that, because there was a moment where I looked at Bryan, I looked at Matt, and we were just like.
Yeah.
I was just in awe of what God was doing, and I was just like, this is what it's all about here in Grady
And
County.
I had just gotten here too.
Yeah.
So that's what was, you know, that was, because I like to think of it like this. You know, you think about like some of the great world wars that we had in this country. I mean, what would it have been like if our Army didn't want to fight with our Marines?
Yeah.
If our Navy didn't want to help out with the, you know, with the National Guard, like what would that have looked like? I mean, that's what we're doing in our churches. I
Absolutely.
mean, we're trying to fight a battle in separate entities, and we're not really getting there anywhere.
Absolutely. So, anyways, well, you know, that was I've always wanted to talk about it, because I think it is so important. So, but anyways, I love that. So I'm gonna throw it over to Matt. Matt, if you have any last departing words or questions.
All right. No, I mean, listen, I have, and I don't get a chance. I always told myself that if I ever get a chance, I want to, you know, invest into the hearts of the men that serve in ministry, because I know how in a moment you can kind of get snatched away from that. And so I just want to say, first and foremost, man, I have respect for you guys. You know, coming in as a new guy, and, you know, I've only been here since January, and so getting to ask questions, you know, and I think a lot of times, like, I don't think people realize that, like, at least for me, like, I do my homework. So, like, you know, we talked about in the last episode, you know, before we actually came, you know, we came a couple of different times when nobody knew we were coming. Because I wanted to see how the church was gonna treat us as a visitor, so I knew kind of what to gauge what they would treat me as a minister. But you know, I did my homework on a lot of you guys. You know, just asking questions and seeing what people thought, and just to hear the responses from people about each one of you guys, man, was breathtaking for me. Because the people love you, they care about you.
Sam goes breathtaking in a good way, right?
There's been a few people that I've handed $20 bills out to, and I'm glad that you lined up with
Good,
those
man.
people. So that's awesome.
Good, because they gave me $20 to say that. So thank you.
Rich
Thank you,
guy
Sam.
here.
All kidding aside,
Yeah.
Matt, that since the first time I met you, there's been just that common bond.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Thank
appreciate
you.
those kind words.
Yeah, thank you.
And Brandon, anyway, moving on. No,
So ending the podcast now.
all kidding aside, Brandon has been. I actually saw him before he knew who I was, and I don't know if I ever even told him this.
Oh boy.
My first experience with you was at Mr. Chick, and I was sitting there with Crystal, and you had a group. I'm talking a table, like 3 tables full of students, and you'd just come here, and I was like, wow, he's getting off to the right start.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Meeting and
I
interacting
don't remember
with
seeing
his
you, but I do remember
students.
that. Yeah.
That's right.
Huh.
So you guys are awesome. Thanks for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now we didn't get into the conversation today, but we will. They're both Georgia Bulldog fans, so we'll have to have you guys back on, and we'll discuss sports.
Whole nother podcast.
Here's the thing: the people don't know this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it now. So we were doing a sound check right before this podcast went live, and we recorded for 20 minutes and I just forgot to press the stop button. But we had a Michael Jordan LeBron debate,
and Kobe.
and Kobe Bryant. Now there are 3 people on the right right side of history. And there's 3 of us that believe LeBron is better than Michael Jordan. Now, this is probably going to get a lot of debates in the comments. If you've listened to the podcast this far, thank you. And because we're running on an hour here, and so, but we'll have you guys back for the sports debate.
sure.
And so
That'll be fun.
and
Be
you know,
ready.
and come football season, we'll have the Georgia, Florida, and Auburn. It's so funny we say Georgia, Florida, and then like that guy over there, like, that Auburn guy.
That
over
one
there.
dude
Yeah.
in the corner.
Yeah, because you're talking to 2 teams that kind of had their way with y'all.
That's true.
This
That's
past
true.
year.
That's
So
okay.
yeah,
It's
but
okay.
we'll have the conversation at some point. No, but again, thank you guys so much for
thank y'all.
joining us
Thank
today.
y'all. Enjoyed it. It's been awesome.
We'll definitely have you guys back again. Sam Quick, Bryan Gainous, Providence Baptist Church. You know, you guys have a great place over there. So we're praying for you guys, praying for y'all, praying for your ministry. And again, as we finish it out, Matt, as always, it's been great. But be
Yes, sir.
sure to join us on all of our different platforms. We have Facebook at the Syrup City Podcast, and you can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, and that is Syrup City Podcast. Syrup City is one word. And then also, too, you can catch us on syrupcitypodcast.podbean.com. And our next episode will be a week from now, Friday at noon, so be sure to check it out then on all those platforms. But other than that, hope you guys all have a great day, and we'll see you very, very soon.
See you guys.
God bless.
Bye.